The 2019 Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali. This for his efforts in helping end his country's 20-year war with Eritrea. Announcing the prize in Oslo, the Norwegian Nobel Committee said that Abiy's efforts deserve recognition and need encouragement. The committee also praised the Prime Minister not only for pushing for peace with Eritrea, but also for carrying out a raft of reforms. Ahmed granted amnesty to thousands of political prisoners and allowed opposition groups to operate after years of oppression and freed the muzzled media. His efforts to end the political crisis in Sudan were also a factor in the decision to award him the prize.
Well, there is obvious excitement here in Addis Ababa, and that will obviously spread through Ethiopia as people celebrate the victory, or what they term now as the victory, and the global recognition of their Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And this many people support. Those who support him say that he deserves it because within just a span of a year and a half, he has given people hope. Which people did not have in the past 27 years. People have compared what he has done within this 1 year to what was not done within the past 27 years. And notably is, for example, the inclusion of women in political positions and also leading parastatals and all that, something that wasn't there before. And also notable within the country is the fact that he, within the 100 days of his transitional rule, he released political prisoners who had been imprisoned because of their political sentiments by the past regime. And also the fact that during this year he reached out to the neighboring country and most clearly Eritrea, which had had a stalemate with Ethiopia for over 2 decades. And after that we've seen him going to Djibouti, trying to reconcile Djibouti and Eritrea, and recently trying to offer mediation between Kenya and Somalia over their maritime mineral. So those who support him say he deserves it.
All right, our reporter Coletta Wanjohi there reporting. Okay, so let's bring it back home, and we're joined now by our foreign editor Sophie Mokoena to talk to us about this Peace Prize. Was this a surprise?
Well, I can say yesterday when I realized that he is in for the running, I predicted that he is going to get this one, because the person who really wanted this prize badly, it was Donald Trump. That is why he was working very hard on the Korean Peninsula question, trying to push North Korea or the DPRK to disarm, the nuclear disarmament. But it didn't work because Donald Trump is that kind of a person who is competing with his predecessor, Barack Obama, who got an award. And therefore, I knew that, there's no way that the committee could arrive at the conclusion that Donald Trump deserves it, particularly when he has divided different multilateral organizations and he doesn't really subscribe to multilateralism. He is inward looking. It's always America first. And therefore, the prize speaks to a person who has done a good work in trying to bring peace, not only in his country, but also outside. If it's inside the country you represent, that should translate into an achievement in your region or the world. For an example, Nelson Mandela and de Klerk. Yes, it was about South Africa, but South Africa was the last country on the continent to be liberated, and therefore the peace process that led to the freedom of South Africa, if you believe it was real freedom, it was inward in terms of content, but had an implication to the continent at large and the world.
All right, so a lot of people possibly don't quite understand the geopolitics of the continent, and Eritrea, tiny little country in the Horn of Africa. How significant was the work that he did to bring peace in that region?
Even the continental body and the region had failed to bring peace between these two countries. But a young guy at the age of 42 last year was able to end that long-standing conflict or tension. Today you have Ethiopian airline flying to Eritrea. There's free movement of goods and services and people now. And it looks like the region has experienced relative peace since those negotiations. He didn't end there. When there was tension in Sudan, he became a mediator. He was able to push the military and the civilians to come to the negotiating table and agree on the interim government. You may have questions in terms of how it was constituted, because I still have a gripe that women who led that protest were kind of sidelined. But today, again, we celebrate the news that Sudan has appointed a woman to be Chief Justice. You know that when he came to power, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia appointed a woman to be a Chief Justice, but also a woman from the opposition bank to lead the Electoral Commission preparing for elections. He has done a lot. Right now, he is trying to assist Somalia and Kenya to find one another.
All right, so a lot of work is done in the region, neighboring countries, but also there seems to have been quite a shift in the internal politics of Ethiopia under his leadership.
Yes, you still have people who are aggrieved and there's pushback, but he has done a lot to try and ensure that the opposition is free to exercise its right and also the freedom of speech. At times, he does experience criticism, because when there are tensions, because the issue of security is very difficult in Ethiopia. At times you don't have internet, when perhaps the intelligence has given indication that something is brewing. You'd recall that the chief of army was killed. There was an attempt, to overthrow a region. But unfortunately, that didn't really materialize, but people died. And therefore, sometimes you'll find a situation where there's no internet, there's no connectivity. But he is trying very, very hard, very, very hard. And the good thing is he is kind of saying you can give young people responsibility to lead. And when they mean business, they will do it without hesitation.
I suppose what it speaks to as well is often African leaders are accused of not having the political will. They know what needs to be done, but there seems to be this new wave of leadership that's starting to come through where there's more action than talk.
Exactly. The problem is corruption and what people have done before. When you have done bad things in office, you are not going to, reflect and say, let me leave. Because you know that as soon as you leave office, all what you have done will come out. But people who know very well that I didn't do anything intentionally or perhaps corruption, you just leave office. In terms of implementation of decisions as well, you don't hesitate. And you always ensure that whatever you do, it's in the interest of the country, the region, the continent, or the world. At times, people may not agree with what you are doing, but finally, you know very well that what you are doing is in the interest of humanity.
All right, Sophie, we're going to have to leave it there, but it looks as if this is largely a popular choice that the Ethiopian Prime Minister is being recognized in this way.
Yes, I'm just waiting for the US. The reaction has been overwhelming. I am waiting to hear Donald Trump later when he is engaging on the talks, on the trade talks with China this afternoon.
He's probably going to call it fake news. All right, that's where we're going to leave that for the time being. Ethiopia's Prime Minister is the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize.